Hello, good achievement. That's your favorite poultry farmer, Godboard, Kelly Chikwuebuka. Now, there are some common mistakes most rural poultry farmers do in their poultry farm. Now, I'll be at least 10 common mistakes most poultry farmers do in their poultry farm. Now, I'll be at least their mistakes, the consequences of that mistakes, and solutions to that mistakes. Now, number one is poor biosecurity practice in your poultry farm. Now, as a rural poultry farmers, what are the mistakes of poor biosecurity in your poultry farm? Now, allowing unauthorized people or animal into your poultry house, using contaminated equipment, and not practicing proper sanitation in your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences of poor biosecurity in your poultry farm? Increased rate of disease outbreak, leading to high mortality rate and financial losses in your poultry farm. Now, what are the solutions to poor biosecurity in your poultry farm? Implementing strict biosecurity measures, including disinfection protocol and controlling access to farm in your poultry farm. Okay, now number two, inadequate housing and ventilation. Now, as a rural poultry farmer, what are the mistakes of inadequate housing and ventilation in your poultry farm? Now, overcrowding of bed, poor sanitation, poor ventilation, and inadequate temperature control in your poultry farm. Now, this can cause inadequate housing and ventilation. Now, what are the consequences of inadequate housing and ventilation in your poultry farm? You have heat stress, respiratory issue, and slow growth. Yeah, these are the consequences. Now, what are the solutions to these mistakes and these consequences? We are providing sufficient space, ensuring proper ventilation, and maintaining optimal temperature according to your bed age in your poultry farm. Now, this will go a long way in solving housing and ventilation problem in your poultry farm. Now, number three, improper nutrition. Improper nutrition. Now, as a rural poultry farmer, what are the mistakes of improper nutrition in your poultry farm? We have feeding birds with low quality feed, incorrect feed formulation, and irregular feeding schedule in your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences as a rural poultry farmer? What are the consequences of improper nutrition? We have poor growth, low feed conversion rate, and increase of high mortality rate in your poultry farm. Now, what are the solution of improper nutrition in your poultry farm? We have used high quality feed specifically formulated for broilers. Now, and follow recommended feeding schedule for your poultry farm, for your broiler poultry farm. Okay. Now, number four, we have lack of proper vaccination. Now, as a poultry farmer, be very sensitive. As a rural poultry farmer, be very sensitive during vaccination. Now, what are the mistakes of lack of proper vaccination in your poultry farm? We have skipping vaccination, using expires or improper stored vaccines, and not following the correct vaccination schedule in your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences of lack of proper vaccination in your poultry farm? We have increased vulnerability of disease like Newcastle disease, Gomboro disease, and Mari disease, now leading to large scale losses in your poultry farm. Now, what are the solutions? Remember, I told you guys, in every mistake, in every problem, there's always a solution. Now, what are the solutions of lack of proper vaccination in your poultry farm? You have follow strict vaccination schedule, using vaccines from reputable source, and store them properly. Now, number five, neglecting litter material. As a poultry farmer, please, as a rural poultry farmer, please take care of your litter material. Now, what are the mistakes of neglecting litter management? Now, we have not regularly changing or managing the litter, allowing it to become wet and dirty. Now, allowing your litter to become wet and this might cause a whole lot of consequences. Now, what are the consequences? We have a minor buildup, increased risk of respiratory diseases, and high incidence of coccidiosis. Now, what are these coccidiosis? You see your blood excreting red poo and white diarrhea. Now, those are the consequences of neglecting litter management. Now, what are the solutions? Now, remember, I told you guys there's only solution to every problem. Now, what are the solutions to neglecting litter management? We have regularly turn, dry, and replace litter to maintain a clean environment. Now, remember, number one, we still talked about biosecurity. Biosecurity goes a long way in your poultry farm. Now, guys, number six. Remember, we have 10 mistakes most rural poultry farmers do in their poultry farm. Now, we have number six, inconsistent water supply. Guys, make sure there's always clean and neat water in your poultry farm. Now, what are the mistakes of inconsistent water supply in your poultry farm as a rural poultry farmer? Providing providing dirty and insufficient water, or failing to ensure constant supply of water in your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences of inconsistent water supply in your poultry farm? Your birds get dehydrated, they reduce feed intake. Remember, when these guys keep feeding, they need water to digest the food they've taken thus far. Now we have slower growth. Now we have slower growth and increased mortality. Now remember, there's only solution. Now, what are the solutions? Ensure there's a constant supply of clean fresh water and regularly cleaned water, and make sure your drinkers are always clean, and make sure that the source where you're coming from is clean. Now, if you can't drink the water you're giving to your bird, that means the water is not good. When I don't mean drinking it from the drinker, drinking it from the source where this water is coming from. Now, number 7, overcrowding. Guys, avoid overcrowding. Now, what are the mistakes most rural poultry farmers do when they overcrowd? Keeping too many birds in a limited space to maximize production. Keeping too many birds in a limited space to maximize production. Guys, avoid overcrowding your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences of overcrowding? You have increased stress. Your birds go through a lot of stress, high risk of disease spread, poor growth, and increase in mortality. Your birds keep dying continuously because of they can't have enough space to perform their natural behavior, like dustbaiting, running around, flapping their wings, and distribution of print oil. Now, what are the solutions? Guys, provide adequate space per bed as recommended, as recommended based on the stocking density in your poultry farm. Guys, number 8. Now, what is number 8? Inadequate record keeping. As a poultry farmer, as a rural poultry farmer, please keep record. Now, what are the mistakes when you don't keep record in your poultry farm? Now, failing to keep record to feed intake, failing to keep record of feed intake, growth rate, vaccine schedule, and mortality. Now, you just don't know what you're doing at all. Now, what are the consequences of inadequate record keeping, not keeping record? What are the consequences? Difficulty in managing the flock, identifying problem early, and making informed decision. You just don't know what to do. Okay, now what are the solutions of inadequate record keeping? Maintain detailed record of all aspects of farming operation to track the performance and identify issues. Now, when you keep record, when your bird comes in, when you notice a particular disease, work for the day on what was the sign. Guys, record is awesome in your portfolio. Now, guys, number 9, sorry. Now, number 9 is very sensitive. Ignoring early signs of disease. Guys, as a poultry farmer, as a rural poultry farmer, make sure you identify early signs of disease. Now, what are the mistakes most rural poultry farmers do in the poultry farm when early signs of disease comes in? Now, what are the mistakes? Not paying attention to early symptom of illness, or waiting too long to seek veterinary advice. Guys, do not wait. Immediately you notice any disease or any disease in your poultry farm, make sure you take adequate action in your poultry farm. Now, guys, what are the consequences? Now, the consequences are disease outbreak can spread quickly, leading to high mortality and significant financial loss in your poultry farm. Now, what are the solutions? Now, monitor birds daily. As a rural poultry farm, make sure you're monitoring your bird consistently every day for any signs of illness, or take prompt action if issues are detected. Now, guys, number 10. Guys, this number 10 is very sensitive as a poultry farmer. This number 10 is very, very sensitive. Now, over-reliance on antibiotics. Guys, avoid the way you use antibiotics in your poultry farm. Now, what are the mistakes of using too much of antibiotics in your poultry farm? Using antibiotics at first response of hurt might cause a whole lot of issues in your poultry farm. Now, what are the consequences? Develop antibiotics resistance, distribution of gut health. This might cause a whole lot of issues in your poultry farm. Now, what are the solutions? Use antibiotics only when necessary.